My name is Anthony Fabian and I'm the director of a film called Skin. Skin tells the story, it's a true story about a black girl from South Africa who was born to two white Afrikaner parents, and they didn't know they had black ancestry. She was what's called a genetic throwback. So somewhere in her ancestry there must have been black blood. But unfortunately it was during the apartheid era, so it was really a catastrophe in terms of the impact on this family. I think every filmmaker will tell you that the biggest challenge of making a first feature is just getting the finance together, and there's no question this took nearly 7 years for us to make, from the moment that I first heard the story to actually rolling cameras. And it takes a lot of persistence and a lot of willpower to keep going through all that time. I never had any doubts that this film had to be made, so I just kept going. When I first started the journey of trying to tell this story, I was often told, why do you want to tell this story? It's about apartheid, it's about the past. These things are not relevant today, apartheid's over. But the fact is that racism is far from over. It's a problem that afflicts the entire planet. And I think certainly if you look at the debate that's been going around the current US elections, it's inescapable. At the moment we've got distribution in 10 countries, mostly Europe, but also the Middle East, Brazil, Mexico, so lots of different parts of the planet. The US is proving a little bit more challenging in terms of distribution because the industry is in a transitional phase right now, where a lot of the smaller, so-called smaller films or niche films, speciality films, those distributors who were distributing them, half of them have gone to the wall, half of them have disappeared, so the buyers have vanished. I think the central message of my film is that the things that bind us as human beings are much stronger than the things that divide us. That essentially we have more in common with each other as fellow human beings than we have differences, irrespective of what our skin looks like, what our features are. And I think it's incredibly important that that message come across and that people understand that, because race is a very divisive thing, the exclusion that people experience as a result of being different. AFI is a great festival. It's wonderful that it is in the heart of Hollywood so that we have access to the industry. I live in London. It's a tiny industry, and to be placed right in the middle of the film industry is obviously a huge advantage for somebody like me, a filmmaker coming in. Also, the fact that it coincides with the American film market is very important for those of us who are trying to find distributors for our films still. And it's very well organized, it's very friendly, and it's a terrific festival. We have Sam Neill, who plays the father. We have Sophie Okonedo, who's Oscar-nominated actress for Hotel Rwanda, who plays the daughter. And they were the only non-South Africans. Then the mother is played by Alice Krieger, who's the only South African actress of her generation who's actually had a career in Hollywood. So she was in things like Chariots of Fire, she was in King David, the Star Trek movies. She's done stuff for HBO, Deadwood, and so on. So she has a profile in Hollywood, but she is an Afrikaner, the real deal. And she was a touchstone for the actors who were not South African, so that they had some reference point. At any moment, they were able to get a quick line reading, get a quick accent check, so that they were always rooted by her. And I think the result is that people in South Africa tell me that usually they're very embarrassed when they see foreign actors playing South African, and in this case they really felt there was a convincing and authentic performance. And in terms of the crew, we had almost entirely South African crew. I brought a phenomenal makeup artist because the story spans 30 years, and we needed somebody who can actually age. Alice Krieger has to age between 45 and 75. And the emotional climax of the story takes place at the end of her life. And if what you'd been thinking about was makeup at that moment, the whole movie would be ruined. So I got an Oscar-nominated makeup artist called Scott Wheeler, who had just done a film called 300. And fortunately, he also did all the Star Trek movies, so he knew Alice very well. And he dedicated himself for months to create that aging. She ages in 4 different stages, which made it totally credible. And nobody has ever said that they were taken away from the emotional or dramatic experience. So it's very important that I think you use the right local crew if they're available, but that you don't stint on having specialists where you're simply not going to find somebody appropriate in the local country. And I think that's an important lesson for filmmakers to learn. You know, if you're making a film for $50,000, $100,000, fine, you can probably get away with not having any names, but you'll still struggle in terms of getting visibility, because the very first question anybody ever asks you is, who's in it? Before they say what's it about, it's who's in it. And financiers are exactly the same. That's their sort of security blanket. They think that if there are no names in your cast, it will enable your film to be seen. It's no guarantee, in fact. But yes, there absolutely is pressure on you to cast at least a couple of name actors. And we struggled with this film because the central character is a black woman, and there are very few black women who can carry a film or whose name actually means anything at all. I mean, I can name them in, you know, on the fingers of one hand, and not even the fingers of one hand. We were very, very lucky that Sofia Canedo had just been nominated for an Oscar for Hotel Rwanda at the time that she read the script and decided to commit to it. And that gave encouragement not just to the investors, but also to the other actors who we went out to afterwards to play those parents. And I was determined that one of those 3 had to be South African, so that the authenticity of the film would be preserved, and also for the sake of those actors to have something to refer back to. Well, yes, I had a vast support network because you need it to sustain you over the long years when you're trying to make your film. And there were many people within the acting community who were extremely supportive of the project along the way and made suggestions. In terms of casting, you're really relying more on a casting director, particularly when you're working in a foreign country, because you don't necessarily have your finger on the pulse of the local talent. But interestingly enough, when casting Skin, there were actors who I had used through, for instance, a workshop process that I did in developing the script, who recommended other actors who themselves had networks. And, you know, that became the community and the family that helped to cast the film. And one of my actresses saw a little boy in a supermarket and said, you know, this little boy would be perfect to play Sandra's younger brother. So that kind of thing is obviously really, really helpful when people are looking out for you in that way. So my name is Anthony Fabian. My film Skin is screening this evening, Monday the 3rd of November at 7 p.m. and it's screening again on Thursday at 3:30 p.m, Thursday the 6th of November. So we've got one before the election and one after the election, and it'll be interesting to see what the reaction is given those 2 very different moments in history.